this new railroad, I moved out to Nebraska about 4 years ago. I hopped on board with another railroad and low man on the seniority pole. And that's just where I ended up on second shift. I actually prefer working nights. It just works better with my internal schedule.
Yeah.
That doesn't leave a lot of time for much of a social life or doing other things I would like to do. But that's just the way it goes. But in my earlier years, my 20s, I worked second shift and third shift all the time.
Yeah.
And that just always seemed to work best for my schedule. Not that I hate working day shift, but it's just how the body adapts. And I work better at night. For some reason, I'm just one of those weirdo people.
Yeah, do you feel like you always have been better for working at night, like your brain wakes up at night, or is that something like a learned behavior that you've picked up over time?
No, I've always thought I've always been more of a night owl. I had that problem in high school. 11 o'clock at night, and I'm bouncing off the walls because there's all this stuff I want to do. I wanted to practice. I wanted to watch TV shows. And
yeah, man. No,
I got my parents yelling at me. It's like, you need to go. Yeah, you got to be at school in a couple hours. You need to get to bed. And it's like I couldn't. And of course, 6 o'clock in the morning rolls around. I got to wake up and go get on the bus to go to school. And then through the whole day, I'm just half asleep.
I am totally with you, dude. It's a weird thing that I can't help but think now all of my best ideas, all of the most efficient work that I've ever done has been when I'm working on a project between the hours of 10 p.m. and about 3:30 a.m. That's like my golden area. That's when all the best things happen for my brain.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. Especially, and this is what drives my family, every girlfriend, wife I've ever had. 2 o'clock in the morning, I want to pull out my practice chanter.
It exacerbates the problem when you're a bagpiper, doesn't it?
There have been times when I've actually had to leave the house and go sit in my car with my practice chanter because my brain was just, everything was firing. All cylinders are firing. I'm ready to go and I'm ready to learn something or try something out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I dig it, man. That's rough. Well, is your work with the railroad such that you can take a chanter with you and take a break here and there and play a tune?
The last railroad, yes. This railroad, no. This railroad's a little bit more strict, and the area that I work in now it's more of like a production facility.
Oh, gotcha.
And so there's not a lot of downtime. The last railroad I worked for, I ran the machine shop and I did more repair work. So there was a lot of downtime. I would just wait for something to break or wait for somebody to bring me something. So I had moments where I could look over a piece of music or I could take my practice chanter off into a quiet corner and do something. But this railroad I'm at now, things roll in all the time. I don't have any free moments.
You know that, of course, as soon as I hear you talking about working for a railroad, I immediately figure that you must just wear overalls, smoke a cob pipe, and stand at the front of an engine, just billowing steam back and forth across the country. That must be what you do, right? Red handkerchief around the neck and everything.
No. I wear jeans and a t-shirt. I actually work for the section of the railroad I work for now. I inspect the axles and wheel sets underneath freight cars.
Oh, gotcha.
And then when these freight cars come in for repair, they pull the wheel sets out from underneath them, bring them into my area, and I inspect them to make sure either they're good enough to be returned to service, or they need repair work, or they need to go to the scrapyard.
Man, does the weight of that responsibility ever get heavy on your mind? I mean, anybody in quality and safety work, of course you can get numb to it eventually, or you can get so good at it that you're comfortable, but you ever think to yourself no, I don't want a derailment on my conscience,
No, and that's a very for real thing.
Yeah.
The last railroad I worked for, I was in the sector that laid rail. We did track maintenance and we laid new track. It's kind of the same thing with this railroad. I mean, that's the foundation of it all. And if something goes wrong and they can trace it back to you, you could be in a lot of trouble. You could be fined. You can go to prison. It's no different than a lot of the airline mechanics. The same standards that they're under. They have a bigger responsibility.
Yeah. Did you get started doing railroad work in Utah?
No, I started in Colorado.
In Colorado, huh?
Yes. Yeah.
I guess, see, my awareness of railroads is so limited. It's like I know where I had to wait for a train to get to my girlfriend's house when we were kids, and like I know that the Golden Spike is up in northern Utah. But like, that's about as far. I used to carry a pocket watch. That always made me feel kind of like an engineer somehow. So that's about as far as it goes for me, so I'm pretty ignorant of the whole industry.
It's an interesting industry. I've been in it for 24 years now. I got 7 more to go until I can retire. Hope I make it, knock on wood. Hope the whole industry doesn't cave in on itself. But it's an interesting industry. You think it's just a bunch of big mechanical stuff just barreling down the track.
Right.
There's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. The derailment that happened in Ohio is a perfect example of one little thing goes wrong and you have a major catastrophe on your hands.
Yeah.
And it's not just one person at fault. Anybody who had anything to do with that situation is going to get hauled in front of an investigation board. Mm-hmm. And they're going to ask hard questions. And jobs might be lost. And prison sentences might be handed out.
Yeah.
So it's a very for real thing. But I do like it.
So do you feel like you've become a real connoisseur of freight car side graffiti art? Like you've seen some really great stuff. Like you could tell, like, now that took skill,
I've actually seen videos. We get these reports from every railroad has their own little police department, right? And we have surveillance cameras all over rail yards. It's pretty amazing to watch these guys come out to a rail yard, and might be just 2, maybe 3 guys with a spray can in each hand. And in a matter of 5 minutes, they could have an entire side of a freight car painted up.
Man.
It's amazing to watch these guys work, and you think, man,
where are they rehearsing these guys for that?
A blank canvas somewhere in the city and say, hey, make this beautiful. They could make a fortune, but no, they want to break into a rail yard and spray paint. But it's amazing to watch these guys, how fast they work, how fast they can do it. This isn't like an hours-long project. I mean, they get out there in like 5 minutes. They can have a whole side of a rail car just done up.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I have seen some pretty amazing artwork. Yes, I have.
Yeah.
But they bring it to my facility in Havelock, Nebraska, and it goes into the sandblasting pit, and they take it all off.
Yeah.
And then they repaint the car.
Sometimes that's probably not too big a deal, but I got to imagine that sometimes it's like, dang, too bad, because that was cool.
Yeah, no, for real. And I wish I could take pictures, but of course, we have regulations against that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have seen some pretty good artwork come through. I'll admit.
So then maybe take me back a little bit, Scott. I want to hear a little bit of like kind of your biography. Did you grow up there in Colorado? Where did you grow up? Tell me about.
I was born in Germany.
Whoa! That's not at all what I was expecting. How long did you live there?
I lived there until I was 9 years old.
Wow, really?
And then we moved to Colorado, and that's where I did the majority of my growing up.
So did you ever live in Utah?
I did not live in Utah. I tried several times.
That's the thing. I dug you up because I was using the Utah Area Bagpipers Facebook page, but of course that's not just people in Utah. So,
right. No, I tried. Yeah, when I got on board with that first railroad back in Colorado, they had openings in Utah, and I was always trying to get out to Utah. And then with this move to this new railroad, I was going to just do my time out here, and then I was eventually planning on getting to Utah. I was going to transfer to something. Then COVID hit, and that shut that whole thing down. And we're still trying to get sorted after all that whole catastrophe. But no, I've never lived in Utah. Been to Utah several times. When I was in the Wasatch Band, I was out there every month.
Yeah, I see. You traveled. Yeah, that's the thing. I've seen you on Facebook in Wasatch kilts, and so I was just assuming you'd been living up there.
Yeah, sometimes twice a month, depending on what was going on. Either they come out for the games, or they had a workshop. Or I did have a lot of friends out in Utah at one point. So yeah, I did spend a lot of time in Utah. I really liked Utah. It was kind of like, especially Salt Lake City area, because it was like Denver, but not as crowded.
Yeah, totally. I can totally see that. Yeah, it's like Denver,
and it was still the mountains. You know, I miss the mountain air. I really do miss the mountain air.
Yeah.
Because everything down here is just wet all the time. It's just, I'm not used to humidity, so it kind of gets on my nerves sometimes. Yeah. But I do miss that dry mountain air. I do miss the scenery. I don't know if you've ever been out this way in this part of the Midwest. It's flat and it's pretty boring to look at.
Yeah, my dad grew up in South Dakota, We'd go out
there you
there
go.
every summer when I was a kid. We were out there, and yeah, not only flat but also humidity. Both things were things that I was not used to, and I did not. I think I was like 4 or 5 years old. My parents tell me I got out of the car at my grandma's house, and right in the middle of probably June or July there in Sioux Falls, and I just went, the air here is bad, and I got back in the car.
The only benefit, bagpipes sound amazing out here.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Get a little closer to sea level and a little more humidity. That's
big sound. And that was kind of a shocker. Last year I went to the Chicago Highland Games. That was the first time I went to that games.
Yeah.
But even the grade 5 bands have big sound. And I think that humidity and lower elevation really do make a difference. You get into the mountain states, the drier air and the higher elevation, that thins out.
It thins things out. That's exactly the word I would use. Yeah, thins out.
It even thins out the midsection drums. I noticed that too. And in the Chicago contest, the midsection drums really stand out. Even with the smaller chords, you could really actually hear all the pitches in the different tenor drums. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is funny how hard that can be to pick out here locally.
Yeah, now, but you go to like the Estes Park games. I don't know if you've ever done the Estes Park games in Colorado.
Yeah.
I mean, it just the sound just disappears up there. Not just for pipes, but for drums too. It's a beautiful place to be. It's a great place to visit. It's not a great place to play, right?
So were you born in Germany because your parents are military, or were they German citizens themselves, or how did that happen?
So my dad was in the military. He was in the Army.
Yeah.
And my mom, born in Scotland, she was actually working as a nanny in Germany because she was trying to immigrate to Australia. She was trying to save up money. Yeah. And they met in a Munich beer hall during Oktoberfest.
That's the most German thing they could possibly have done.
And then 2 years later, I came into the world. So there you go.
Did your mom ever make it to Australia? You guys move around a bit before coming here? Or?
She did not. No, actually, we stayed in Germany for a lot of years, and then we moved to Colorado. That was it.
That was the move, huh?
That was the move.
Yeah. Well, what do you have clear memories of Germany? Do you ever?
Oh yeah.
Do you go to every Oktoberfest you can and just think, finally some good bratwurst, or?
Sometimes, Denver always had a big one. I'd go there, but then there was always those moments where you'd hear the music and you taste the food, and it brings you back to a time. My adjustment to coming to America was actually pretty difficult because
was it?
I had a European mother, and I was born and raised in a European country.
Yeah.
Things are different over there. And then I came to America, a little bit of culture shock.
Yeah.
And there were times when I was a kid, I was just like, crying to my parents, like, when are we going back to Germany? And of course they're like, well, we're not, being born and raised in a different part of the world, then you come to America where things are different. And of course, America is my home. I'm not gonna debate that or anything, but it was a culture shock, especially for a 9-year-old kid. I don't know what's going on. We jump on a plane, next thing you know, I'm in a foreign land, and everybody's talking weird. You just get used to hearing German in the background all the time, right?
Oh, of course, that's a real thing,
I was never fluent in German, but I knew enough of the language. I could hear it. I could know what people were saying. Yeah. I could vaguely read road signs and things like that. And then all of a sudden, you don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I've heard that even babies who are adopted into a country where a different language is spoken, even if they weren't old enough to speak a country yet, a part of what can be difficult for them, part of why maybe they cry so much and stuff like that, right, is that the background sound is different. Just the sounds are different, even if they didn't, even if they couldn't have spoken themselves, you get used to hearing the language that you're hearing.
Yeah, and then customs are different too. Like I said, I was old enough there that you pick up on local customs. And I bring this up as an example. And so in Germany, if two people are walking down the sidewalk and they pass each other, if you don't know that other person and you have no reason to talk to them, you just look ahead and just keep on walking.
Yeah.
You don't look over there and smile and say good morning. That doesn't happen.
Right.
So that was the environment I grew up in. And then all of a sudden, a 9-year-old kid, you come to America, and then I walk past somebody, and they're smiling at me, and I'm just like, what? What's going on here?
Smiling at you and saying, hello, how are you today?
Yeah, and people are trying to talk to me, and I'm like, hey, get away from me, you molester. What are you trying to do here? It was little things like that. It took me several years to actually, get reprogrammed.
It's funny, dude. I have a really close friend who moved up here to the States from Mexico. It's actually been like 7-8 years now that he's been living up here. But we went to dinner after he'd been here for a couple years, and I was just talking with him about like, what are you getting used to? What's weird? What do you miss about home? That kind of stuff. And he was like, man, Americans are just like so cold, like they won't talk to you, they won't look at you. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, there's just your example of like what you're coming from is what you're used to, and I tried to tell him, I was like, if you went to some of these Western and Northern European countries, they would say exactly the opposite. Like Americans would say that those people are the ones who are cold and won't talk to you and such. And if they were to come here, they say Americans are way too like in your face and friendly and ready to speak, and so then Mexico goes even further along that spectrum, I guess,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I would agree with that. Yeah.
Well, so your mom was from Scotland. Was that part of why bagpipes came into your life?
This is a funny story.
Or did she fight bagpipes coming into your life?
No, she didn't. Yeah, my grandfather would send her records every once in a while of Scottish music. And it was different Ceilidh band kind of stuff, some Scottish country dance music, and a couple of the records they sent over had bagpipe bands. Mm-hmm. And I remember I heard it. I was like, man, that's amazing. That's interesting. But of course, in Colorado Springs, that's where I grew up. This is in the days before the internet and all that stuff. My mom thought she was the only Scottish person in Colorado. We didn't know there was anything else out there. But I always said, man, that's an interesting instrument. I learned how to play that. Well, that happened as a kid. Yeah. But here's the other half of the story. So I've always been like a different child. And when everybody was jumping on a bandwagon and doing this thing over here, I was off doing something else, because I didn't want to do what everybody else was doing. So when all of us kids in elementary school started, the school band stuff started up, and I had a friend who wanted to play trumpet, I had another friend who wanted to play saxophone. Right. I decided I was going to play accordion.
So there's your German experience coming out there, huh?
Possibly, but then also it was because I didn't want to do what everybody else was doing. All these kids want to join school band and play school instruments. I was like, I'm going to do this cool thing over here.
Go be a band unto yourself.
Yeah, well, nobody else thought accordion was cool but me. Yeah. But I've always been that kind of person. I've just never, followed a crowd or gone with the flow. Just everybody's over here doing their thing, and I'm just everybody else is doing it. So I'm gonna go find something new. Yeah. So I got to my teenage years, and that's when my grandparents actually had come over that summer, brought me my first kilt from Scotland, and then we went to the Colorado Renaissance Festival. Uh-huh. And at the Colorado Renaissance Festival, they had what they called the Celtic Weekend. And that was the first time I had heard bagpipes in person, because they had a whole band there. Mm. It was the St. Andrews Pipes and Drums band from Denver. And that was the first time I'd heard bagpipes, pipe band live in person. And I was in the front row, and I was just amazed. It was just loud and bombastic, and it's just overpowering, and I fell in love with it. Yeah. But the thing I think sealed the deal was during the pipe band performance, they had the dancers come out. Oh, yeah. And I remember this one dancer caught my eye. She had the most graceful walk when she came out to the stage, and I watched her dance probably 3 times. And I fell in love, right? I thought, okay, that was it. That was going to seal the deal. And I decided I was going to learn how to play the bagpipes. I was going to meet that girl. We're going to fall in love, get married, yada, yada, yada.
That could be a perfect storybook story. Absolutely.
And it didn't happen. So
what?
Oh, yeah. Well, I fell in love, but she wasn't having it. So but that's just the way it goes. But, I stuck with it because, like I said, I was just always, at that point in my life, I was really into my culture. Yeah. And that was something I think that it was different coming to America, is kids didn't have a sense of their culture, their identity, or where they came from. And a lot of them just didn't care, but I did.
It's such a young place, isn't it? Coming from somewhere like Germany, like there's a pretty big difference in terms of like the history of the current culture on this piece of land.
because everybody in America says, I'm an American first, and wherever their cultural lineage is, that comes later down the road. But I always had an attachment to my own culture. I wanted to know where I came from. I thought I came from a pretty cool place. It had a pretty cool history, and it had this really cool instrument that nobody else plays.
Yeah.
So that's how I got drawn in. Like I said, I always wanted to do something different, and it was just part of who I was, who I am.
So were you when you got started playing? I mean, did you find a local teacher, and did you get right in with a band, or were you running around solo for a while?
Yeah, I was actually there was a new band that just had formed up. And it was just 4 pipers. It was 3 pipers and then me, the young kid beginner who didn't know what the hell he was doing.
Yep.
And we started the Pikes Peak Highlanders, and that was the first band in Colorado Springs. And that was, it grew, it grew. We added a couple pipers and a couple drummers. And looking back on it, it was basically just a collection of people that weren't wearing any of the same uniform items, weren't even playing the same chanters, not even the same drums. I mean, we had a mismatch of all kinds of drums.
Yeah.
It was just kind of a gaggle of people that just kind of wandered down the street together.
Yeah.
But I stuck with that band, and I helped bring that band up to the top of grade 4 at that time.
That's not nothing. To go from 0 to top of grade 4, man, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. My principal teacher was Gordon Spears. When he moved out to Colorado, I started taking lessons from him. And Gordon was always pushing me to go more the solo route, and I really did not like doing solos.
Oh, really?
I don't mind listening to a good soloist, but I hated doing solo competition. I couldn't stand it. It drove me up the wall. I was always more focused on the band.
Yeah.
I just, for some reason, I've always gravitated more towards band playing and, getting a group of people together, getting them on the same page and producing good music. That's what I've always wanted to do.
There is a kind of magic there, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, people talk about the differences, what's harder, band piping, solo piping. I honestly think band piping, being a band piper is harder than being a soloist. I really do. But yeah, much to Gordon's dismay, I wasn't interested in becoming the top level soloist that he wanted me to be. And of course, at that time in Colorado, to be a top level soloist, you basically had to go to California.
Right, not enough.
Didn't really have the money to travel. To go to a solo contest. So my focus was always band, and it's always been band.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm happiest. And that's where that's where I operate the best, I think, is in a band setting.
Yeah. Did you feel like growing up with a military dad in any way kind of made it very easy to slip right into the sort of pipe bands have a sort of military heritage built into them, even the rank names for leadership and things like that. Did that feel really familiar for you?
I don't think so. I can't say for sure it did or it did not. I think my focus was always we're a team. Doesn't matter who's leading, but we're all a team. We're all in this together, and let's all put egos aside and do the very best we can.
Yeah.
Don't have to love each other, but we have to work together. Let's get together and do something. Let's do something cool. Let's do something good.
Yeah.
And that's always what I wanted to do. And so I think, the rank structure, the discipline, this guy's on top and the rest of us are down below. No, I don't think that really came into play. My thing was let's just get a group of people together. We're all doing the same thing. We're all here. Let's see how good can we make this and how far can we take it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah.
Now, when you came over to Colorado initially, I'm just thinking did your dad stay military or did he go into railway work? And is that how you got into railway work, or was that something you discovered on your own?
No, my dad did another, I think, 7 years after we got to Colorado. He stayed in the military. He retired. Mm-hmm. And then he got into he got into supply his last couple of tours in the military. That's what he ended up doing later. I actually I went to Scotland in 1989, and I visited Bob Shepherd's shop.
This was a recreational visit, or were you staying there for a while?
Yeah, no, it was a recreational visit. I went with my mom. We were on holiday.
Yeah.
But I got to see Bob Shepherd's bagpipe making shop, and I got to talk to his son, Doug. And of course, I was talking to Doug, and at the time, I had an interest in getting into the machine shop. I always wanted to be a machinist.
Yeah.
And Doug had said, well, bagpipe making is kind of a cross between woodworking and machining.
Yeah.
Especially
totally.
when you're doing bores, because a lot of bagpipe makers use gun boring equipment.
Yeah.
Rifling equipment.
Yeah.
For drone bores. And that's what kind of got me started in the machine shop. And then I worked several machine shop jobs before I started with the railroad, and then I ran the machine shop with Union Pacific Railroad for 15 years in Denver.
Did you ever have, when you've been working in machine shops, did you ever have access to like really cool CNCs kind of equipment, and like just go ahead and make yourself a set of pipes out of some weird material like an aluminum alloy set of drones or anything like that?
No, I actually found CNC machining very boring. But doing all the programming,
Right.
the programming for CNC machining takes longer than making the part itself.
Right, it's
so
kind of front
never,
heavy in that way, isn't it?
Right. Peter Chrysler and I had many, many long hour conversations about that. Man, how many pieces of plastic he went through to get his bagpipe the way it was. And I just didn't have that time for it. So when I started, I did a lot of repair work or replacement part work. I made a lot of chanter caps. I probably made 1,000 chanter caps.
Oh, yeah.
Because I can make one in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
On a manual lathe. It took me no time. A lot of split water traps. Granted, they weren't pretty. They weren't tapered. They weren't beaded or combed. They were just pretty much straight black plastic. But
functional.
somebody said, hey, they wanted a water trap. Okay, cool. I'll make you one in 10 minutes.
Do you have a manual lathe at home? Do you hobby around on it?
No, I don't.
Pen turning or anything like that?
I've been debating about whether or not I want to do that. I mean, it's a lot of money to get into that, and it's a lot of that equipment. The power consumption is through the roof.
Yeah.
So it's not just the cost of the equipment. So your electric bill goes pretty high.
Yeah.
So it's been a nice break from the trade, so to speak.
Sure.
Because, 15 years doing repair machine work at the railroad. It burned me out a little bit, but then I get into and miss it. But what's funny is that I got into machining because eventually I wanted to start making bagpipes.
Right, yeah. That's
But my time in machining, I think I did more work on drums and making drum parts than I did
interesting.
bagpipe. Oh, yeah. A lot of threaded parts on drums. You wouldn't believe it. So a lot of stuck lug nuts that I had, or tuning lugs I had to break free, and a lot of thread chasing, a lot of straightening out drum hoops, that kind of stuff. So I think I did more repair work on drums than I did pipes. Basically.
Well, do you feel like you're burnt out on it, or do you still consider like maybe making bagpipes is a retirement project here in a few years or something?
Yeah, we'll see. I talked to Gibson when he was still alive, and he actually wanted to hire me. Problem was he only wanted to pay me $10 an hour and no benefits and no retirement. So that's not going to happen.
Not quite the same as what Union Pacific could be giving you at the same time, huh?
Yeah. No, it wasn't a good deal. As much as I'd like to, wanted to, if I had a trust fund or something I could live off of, that might have been a good career choice. But no, you never know what the future's going to hold. Maybe I hit the lottery one day and I could set up my own shop. I talked to Ross Morrill a few times. Maybe maybe I would just go work part time at his shop. He could show me.
Go.
He's got an interesting setup going on. I mean, he's making some good stuff.
His sets are lovely. I love seeing them. Every time he comes up with something new, it's pretty to look at.
Oh yeah, and Ross and I had many discussions about that, the way his pipes look. I mean, I think they're awesome because each set's different. It's unique. It's got its own sound. It's got its own look. My problem with a lot of bagpipe makers, they're all just copycats of each other. You know what I mean?
Well, once you get that CNC set up, and you can just shove them through, it's a business model. It's not as exciting for the consumer to look at the different sets, though, of course.
It's not, because the Henderson set, the McCallum set, the Nail set, the Shepherd set, I mean, they all look the same.
Yeah.
Slight differences here and there, but it's all pretty much the same design. And after a while, you're just like, And then you see one of Ross's sets, you're like, ooh.
Right, yeah. Lights everything up, yeah.
Well, that's pretty.
Kind of on that note, I'm just curious what, let's say money were no object. I gave you a blank check, but you have to use it on bagpipe stuff. What would be top of your list?
Well, I'd probably really like David Neal's pipes. So I'd probably do that, but I don't like the plastic mounts. So I'd probably do another exotic hardwood mount. And I'd probably do a brass lined. At least the bottom sections would be brass lined, because I think that adds a really nice brightness to the drone sound. So yeah, and then of course I would probably have Ross make me a custom set. I really love Brazilian kingwood.
Yes.
That's a beautiful wood. Sounds really nice. Unfortunately, it's very hard to get.
Yeah.
So I mean, a blank check is probably what I would need to get a set of kingwood pipes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's probably what I would do. I'm not big on the full silver stuff.
Right. Yeah. So you wouldn't be getting crazy about like a whole lot of fancy silver with engravings on it and all that kind of stuff.
No,
Yeah.
I don't. I played a couple of those DN6 Neils, the full silver. Man, that's a heavy set of pipes.
I'd bet. I've never held one myself, but that makes sense. I'm sure it would be.
Man, that wears out your arm, believe it or not. I mean, if you're a guy that can play 2 or 3 hours a day, you can probably build up that endurance. That's fine. But the rest of us,
Maybe that's your sit-down set, not your parade set, huh?
Well, definitely. But yeah, those are very, very heavy sets. And we all know. I mean, it's just trim. It's just bling.
Of
It
course.
doesn't really
So,
add
yeah.
anything to the sound. And that's why I talked to Ross about it. If I ever have him make me a set, I wouldn't get it mounted with anything.
Yeah.
Not even stainless ferrules. I wouldn't do ferrules. I wouldn't none of that stuff.
Just wood all
just
over.
plain wood.
Yeah.
Yeah, just plain wood.
There's a real beauty to that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
What about your current instrument setup? Just for sake of nerding out, like what kind of drones, reeds, chanters do you play?
So I've got David Neal's and with the Blackwood projecting mounts, which was one of the first 2 sets that landed in America. And I
That's
knew a
pretty
guy
cool.
who was working at Henderson's at the time, and he called me up. He says, "Hey, you wouldn't believe what I got." And so yeah, I snagged up the second set that came to America.
That's awesome.
With the Henderson Deluxe Harmonics or Harmonic Deluxe, whatever, the carbon fiber tongue drone reeds, which my all-time favorite drone reed. I think that's the best drone reed on the market.
Do those have carbon fiber tongues on the tenors as well, or just on the bass?
Yes,
Gotcha.
mine does.
On
yes.
all of them.
Yep. And then the band chanter I'm playing right now is the G1 with the G1 Platinum reed.
Taking notes. I'm taking notes on this as if I were a spy finding out what Wasatch District is using.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what Wasatch is playing. I'm not actually playing with Wasatch right now.
That's right. You're all the way out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And then I've got a Strathmore chanter that I dearly love. I'm playing.
I've never played one of those. You really like that one, huh? I hear
do.
people
It's
mention
got-
them here and there, but it doesn't feel like it's as common as some of the others. You don't come across them as often,
It's got a very comfortable feel, but it doesn't have the problem that the Sinclair chanter is a very comfortable chanter too, but
Yeah.
it's got some finicky notes on it, especially low G. I'm not sure how Sinclair became a popular chanter as it did, because I've talked to some bands that use the Sinclair chanter. Like one low G will be sharp, a couple of them will be flat. You get a couple of weird Fs. But it's a very comfortable chanter to play, and the Strathmore is a very comfortable chanter to play as well. It's not a big taper, and it's got more of a narrow or closer together hole spacing.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're not doing that big stretch. That's what I don't like about the Nail solo chanter. You got a really wide stretch on your bottom hand, and it's not comfortable for me. I don't really have big hands. So I've never found that to be a comfortable chanter to play. But the Strathmore is definitely my favorite solo chanter.
Are you a Highland piper 100%, or do you have like some small pipes, shuttle pipes, border pipes, that kind of stuff on the side too?
I've messed around with the shuttle pipes, and I had a set of Gibson firesides for a while.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have anything like that right now.
Yeah.
I've tried to play bellows pipes a few times. I do not have a talent for that.
It makes your eyes cross, doesn't it? I love anytime I can get a friend on a set of bellows for the first time ever. I love to watch, and it's because I went through the same. I like playing bellows pipes, but I went through the same thing, right? Where like it was like I forgot to blink because I was paying so much attention to going back and forth. In fact, it was really satisfying to me when I saw this guy Liam, who was on the show a little while ago, who's an uilleann piper. He got on some Irish war pipes for the first time in his life. He'd never played mouth blown pipes ever before. And he's trying to blow them up, his right elbow is pumping just regular, just as if he had bellows underneath it. So it's just funny to see the opposite thing happening to a piper, you know? Somehow satisfying, too, to be like, ha ha, you guys get it, too, you know?
You're right, yeah. No, I don't know. I don't have the talent for it. I mean, I've tried it a couple times, and there was a guy out here that has a set of bellows pipes. He one time he said, "Hey, you want to try these out?" I'm like, "Nope."
Been there, done that.
Don't want to embarrass myself. I want everybody to think I'm still a good piper. So.
Yeah, right. So what about listening recreationally? Are there any specific individual pipers or pipe bands or ceilidh groups or Celtic music that you especially like listening to?
For bands, I'm really digging the up and coming grade 1 bands. So Scottish Power. Their name just slipped me. I was just thinking about them a few minutes ago. The up and comers, the ones who are displacing the old guard. Which, I don't mean that in a mean way.
Sure, but, nothing against Field Marshal, of course. Simon
no,
Fraser will always be great, of course.
Yeah. But it's good to see some of these newer bands, newer ideas coming forward.
Yeah.
Taking pipe band music in a different direction, which I think needed to happen. We kind of got stale for way too many years, I thought. Because I remember as a kid, I would pick up all these tapes of different pipe bands through the different eras.
Yeah.
You could hear the progression from the 60s into the 70s into the 80s. But then we hit like the late 90s and through most of the 2000s. Like nothing really changed, you know what I mean?
That's interesting, Scott, because that's precisely when I came into piping. And so for me, I wonder if that's some degree of the angst that I have been experiencing the last few years of feeling like things are stale. Maybe I came in right when things were exactly as they have been ever since I came into it, you know? And so maybe I just haven't been able to be witness to any shifts and changes that would have got me excited, you know?
Yeah. It just seems like... everybody's got their own opinion, of course. But I just thought for a long time, you'd listen to world CDs, and it was just like, man, this band has not changed from last year. You know? I mean, the tunes are different, but it's still kind of the same medley construction.
There's that tricky thing, though, right, where, like, if something is winning, then everybody wants to do that thing, and it can get scary to change. Yeah.
But then again, remember, it was this band from Canada, called 78 Frasers, who went over to the Worlds one year and did something different, and they won. And that changed everything. That's when everything changed, right?
Yeah.
But the progression, like I said, from the late 90s into the 2000s, nothing really changed. And then all of a sudden, you had these up-and-coming bands, Chris Armstrong. And the old guard didn't like Chris Armstrong. Oh, yeah, he's just a young kid. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing. Well, they're not saying that now, are they?
Right,
no.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm kind of excited, and I'm excited for the future now. Like I said, there were things that were just stale for a long. The only thing that really changed was the pitch. The pitch kept on climbing.
I wanted to ask you about that, actually, if you have an opinion.
And the bands kept getting bigger.
That's the other thing I was going to ask you too, Scott. I was going to ask you if you feel like, first I was going to say, do you feel like there's any such thing as too big? Do grade 1 bands, can they ever get too big? And then I was going to ask you, do you think we should standardize pitch and pull it back down and say it's got to be within this range or something to keep it down?
Well, we said that in the late 90s. We're like, wow, this pitch is really climbing. It'll come back any day now, right?
Still waiting for it to come back.
For grade 1 bands, no. If you can get 24 pipers on the same page and sound that good and that close together...
all the better, huh?
Go for it. Now, here's my problem. There's the opposite side of the coin to that. A lot of grade 4 bands will watch world videos, and I think, wow, if we're going to win a contest, we need a big band. No, you don't.
That might actually reduce your chances.
Exactly. And I think that some of the bands that I've tried to help out through the years, that's what they try to stack the bands with people. They're trying to play the numbers game, right?
Yeah.
Bigger sound will impress the judges. Well, if you're putting pipers in there and drummers who aren't ready, that's going to detract from your sound. You don't hide bad pipers. You can't do it, right?
But we always talk about that, don't we? We always do that thing where it's like, well, I'll put so and so between so and so and so and so, and that way it'll hide somehow.
No, judges usually will hone in on that piper.
That's right where the judge is going to stop as they're walking around the circle, right? Stop right behind that person.
I know we're a very top-down a hobby that we have, right? Whatever the grade 1 bands do, it just kind of trickles down. The rest of us follow suit, right? But I think that's a danger for a lot of grade 4 bands and even grade 3 bands. I think, well, the only way we're going to win a contest is if we have a big band, and then we'll let some standards slide, and we'll put some people in there that maybe aren't ready, but we can maybe hide them between some good, better players. No, it doesn't work. I mean, if you got 6 good pipers and 4 good drummers, that's what you go out with. If you say, well, we could go out with 12, well, I wouldn't do it. That was always been I try to counsel bands that don't do it. Go out there, put your best players out there, and let the judges hear that, make a basis of their decision off that. Also playing music that you can actually handle.
Oh, yeah,
that was another thing I try to counsel bands, because whatever band won the Worlds last year, whatever hornpipe they played in their medley, 20 bands next year, 20 grade 4 bands are going to be playing that same hornpipe and not playing it well. And I would tell them, it's like, that's not your strength. You guys don't play that hornpipe well. Bands don't like hearing that, but I try to tell them, it's like, that's the first piece of music that judge is going to hear. Just play a good march. Play a good march. Go out there with your best players and play music that you can handle.
There's something to be said for a simple thing done well being better than a complex thing being screwed up.
But again, pipe band uniform. I mean, that's the same thing. Somebody will see one of the grade 1 bands on the video or on the live feed, be like, and then all of a sudden you see that band the next season, they're wearing the same outfit. Come up with your own stuff, guys.
The trends, and that's an expensive trend when you have to buy all new, not just kilts, man. The hose and the special Glengarries and everything. That's expensive stuff.
Color coordination is kind of getting on my nerves, but But then again, I'm also mostly colorblind, so I don't know.
Oh yeah.
I don't see colors the same way everybody else sees. Or that's what my wife tells me anyway.
I'm pretty thoroughly colorblind myself, so I can relate there with you. For a while, we talked when we started the band that I play with here. We talked about just letting everybody wear whatever kilt they wanted. There's a part of me that still thinks that still could have been fun. Still could have been a fun thing to do.
I mean, why not? I mean, when we started Queen City in Colorado years ago, that's what we did. We just wore what we had. There's nothing wrong with that. You know? And you go to a contest and think, the judges aren't going to take her seriously because we're all kind of dressed all mismatched. That's not the case. Wear what you got. And sometimes it is kind of cool to see a collection of pipers and everybody's got their own gear on.
Yeah, it can be fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Though Wasatch is a strong example of where I have been very impressed by uniformity. All that their tartan works well with it, and it can be very impressive to see a big block of uniformity too. So.
Yeah, well, true, and I agree with that. But at the same time, you do what you can.
Yeah, for sure.
And the music should come first, and that's another thing I try to tell bands.
Certainly don't not play just because you don't have the right uniform, right?
Or
play, no matter what.
If you have to make a trade-off between do we bring in an instructor and help us out, or do we buy new sporrans? Bring in the instructor. Get the instructor. Screw the uniform. Unless you're dead set on getting a dress and deportment award.
Yeah.
You only have to wear a kilt. That's the only thing that's required. You got to wear a kilt,
right?
Yeah.
Where you've spent time doing repairs and such on drums. Have you ever picked up sticks or mallets yourself? You ever try snare drum or
I tried, and I when I was in high school, I did a couple semesters in the high school band in wind ensemble. And that was just after I'd been in the pipe band world for a while, and I picked up some drumming skills. And so I thought, this would be cool. I could take some music classes in high school. But the problem is that all the other drummers that were in this class all claimed that they were tone deaf. So they got all the snare parts and the battery percussion. And I got stuck on mallets and timpani. Yeah. So I got a pretty good timpani skills. But other than that, and I've tried to occasionally pick up a pair of sticks and play. But I don't have the time. I don't really have the time to put into it. So.
I feel like I've seen a few times pipe bands that will add one of those quads to their drum layup drum layout, and I feel like that's pretty cool. But I don't feel like I see it very much. So I wonder if it's maybe hard to do or just isn't typical enough to really have caught on.
I think it's both of them because playing quad and even quints. It's got its own style. It really does.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a snare style. It's got its own unique style of playing, and if it's done well, it's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do get somebody who's just kind of just beating along to the rhythm, okay, you can keep it,
Yeah.
But we did see years ago up in Enumclaw, the Enumclaw contest, and one of the drum corps during their drum salute contest did have a quad player.
Gotcha. Yeah.
An actual quad player, and he put on a pretty good show. And I thought it did really add a lot to their performance.
That's a great idea to slip it into the drum salute. I can see how that could add a lot without getting mushy with the melody coming from the pipes.
Right. But and pipe band drumming, since I've started, has come such a long way, and I hope it continues.
Yeah.
The multiple pitch tenor drums, that was when I started. That was an absolute no-no. That never happened.
Interesting. It was all uniform.
Back when I started, tenor drummers didn't actually hit the drum. A lot of tenor drummers.
Show, huh?
Yeah, it was just all flourishing. A lot of tenor drummers would actually put a pillow inside their drum, just in case they hit the drum by accident.
In case they hit it by accident.
Yeah, it wouldn't make any sound. But yeah, tenor drummers were just all flourishing. They didn't really. And then one day, all of a sudden, you had the multiple pitch tenor drums. I was like, what? Who allowed this to happen? And I was skeptical at first, but it's taken off, and it's actually, I think it adds a lot to the pipe band performance.
Yeah, super cool.
So you got a good visual going on, and you've got a good drum corps sound going on. And I think that's really added, and I hope that continues. And maybe multiple pitch bass drums as well.
Hey, that'd be fun.
Yeah, who knows? But the staunch traditionalists are going away, which, and one side of me is sad to see, but then again, if we're going to continue with this, if this is going to reach out to a new generation of kids and get them involved and keep them interested, we're going to have to evolve. Piping is very slow to evolve, right?
Yeah.
And that's just the nature of it. But pipe band drumming, if you want to keep drummers, and you want to have a good band, you need good drummers. And you're not going to keep drummers if you're going to do the same old thing over and over again. I've always told
more interesting and exciting things
right.
to do, won't they?
One of the best drummers I worked with in Colorado, this was back when we had the Colorado Sky Band, he got fed up with the pipe band world. He just said it was pretty redundant, pretty boring, and he left the pipe band world to go play with an 80s cover band because that was more exciting. Yeah. That actually made me pretty sad. Yeah. That a guy would leave the pipe band world because he was bored because it just wasn't much change. Yeah. To go play, 80s cover band in some, crappy little bar on the weekends. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That we lost a good drummer. The community lost a good drummer because there just wasn't enough change. There just wasn't enough to keep them interested. Yeah. So I think on the drumming side, we need to be more accepting of change and adaptations. Because I've told bands this, a lot of the bands I work with, this mentality is still out there that a lot of pipers will blame drummers if something goes wrong. Yeah. I try to tell people, drummers play with this thing called a metronome, so they're mostly never wrong. If there's ever a problem in a band, it's usually the pipers. But if you don't have a good drum corps, you don't have a good band. That's it. Yeah. That's it. And if you want to keep your drummers and you want to keep your band viable, you better keep your drummers happy. And people don't like hearing that, but that's the truth of it.
Well, I can tell you, I've certainly had the personal experience that we want to keep them happy because we lose them too easily. In that, it becomes a problem for competition numbers if you have to have so many snares and you simply don't even have that many humans playing snares. Mm-hmm.
So I would tell bands, this happens in the lower grade bands, unfortunately, is they always make, these drummers just in the background making noise. And, okay, you keep saying things like that, they're going to leave, all right? Mm-hmm. And then you're going to be high and dry. So change your attitude.
we gotta be nice to our drummers here.
You better love your drummers. You better show them some respect because really, your bass drummer is the one keeping it all together. Let's face it. That pipe major can stomp his foot all he wants to. That bass drummer is the thing that's tying that whole band together. If you lose your bass drummer, that's it. Yeah. So anyway.
Well, Scott, do you have maybe we go out on some tunes. I'm curious if you have any tunes that stand out in your mind as some real favorites that you just can go back to every day your entire life and you'll never get tired of them. And also, if you have any tunes that you want to never play again because you played too many. And also, if there's any at the top of your list that you still haven't picked up but you want to someday.
See, so the least favorite tunes would be probably that standard Irish set that we've always played for, the last 50 years. Not because I have a problem with Irish music. There's a lot of good Irish music out there, but the Roddy McCorley, Minstrel Boy, Wearing of the Green, those are really bad versions of those songs. They're actually songs. They're not tunes. They're songs.
Yeah.
But if you listen to an Irish Ceilidh band play those songs, it's a different feel. It's got a different rhythm.
Yeah.
It's got a different tempo for sure.
Yeah.
They just don't work well as marches, and I don't think it's a good representation of Irish music.
Well, and our flat seventh sometimes really gets in the way in a weird way on those melody lines too.
Exactly, and it just does not do those songs. I'm going to call those songs because they are songs. It doesn't do those songs justice. And of course, same with things like Danny Boy and Irish Eyes Are Smiling.
Yeah.
Those are songs that are outside of our range, so we don't really do them justice. So those are the things I would like to see go away, right?
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say that there are some good Irish. There's a lot of good Irish music out there that we can, as Highland pipers, play.
Yeah.
And we should be focusing on that and what we can do instead of trying to fudge our way through Danny Boy. Roddy McCorley, Mr. Boy. What's the other ones?
Yeah, the Wearing of the Green, you mentioned that one.
Wearing of the Green, Rakes of Mallow. Jesus, I mean, I wish people, Rakes of Mallow just needs to go away.
You're not the only one who's tired of Rakes of Mallow.
But we keep saying this, right? Everybody's tired of playing it, but what do we do every St. Patrick's Day? Hey, Rakes of Mallow, let's go. Yay, here we go. So, again, it's not that I hate Irish music. I love Irish music. But I think what we play is just not a good representation of Irish music.
Yeah, it's not.
So
those tunes aren't fitting well on the Highland pipes.
No, not at all. Not at all. Star of the County Down, that's another one I've heard bands play.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
When the Chieftains do it, it's awesome. When a pipe band plays it, it's just absolute garbage. Let's not do that.
My band played that in parades for like 3 years, and we had fun with it. I'm guilty.
Yeah. Some of my favorites, Honey in the Bag was one of my favorite jigs. I played that for Highland Dancers for the jig for a lot of years.
Man, I'm not familiar with that one. I'm going to pull that up here.
Yeah.
Check it out later.
Glengarry Gathering, that's always been a favorite march of mine. Probably because it was the first 2/4 march that I was really thoroughly instructed on. That was one Gordon Spears set me up on, just to get me prepped for solo competition. But I've always thought that had a lot of the basics are covered in that tune that translate into other tunes like Highland Wedding. Highland Wedding seems to be like a bigger version of the Glengarry Gathering. It's got those key changes. It's got that really heavy bottom handwork. It's got the heavy top handwork. Right. So Glengarry Gathering has always been one of my favorites, just because I think that's a good foundational tune if you're going to be a good soloist. That's not a good band tune. But if you're going to really approach solos, I think that's a good tune to get on quickly. Let's see, I'm trying to think of some other ones. I'm one of those pipers that I don't memorize tune names, I just memorize the notes.
Oh, I hear you, man. Absolutely. Yeah. You'll hear a tune name, you go, I think I know that, but play it for me for a while first.
Yeah, hum a couple bars.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Yeah, sure, I know that. Pick it right up.
Yeah.
There's a lot of smaller marches that I like. Andrew Warnock,
Oh, yeah,
It's one of my favorite tunes to warm up to. It's 4 parts of 4/4. It's not difficult. Goes through every note. But that's just a great tune.
Yeah.
Cabaret used to be one of my favorites, but I've played that so many times now I'm kind of over it.
You played it too many times, though.
Oh, yeah. Same thing with like Out of the Air and Kelsey's Wee Reel. I played Kelsey's Wee Reel in pretty much every band I've ever been in.
Yeah.
So I'm over that.
Maybe had
really,
enough of
really
that
over.
one,
Yeah, totally. Let's see, what else? Lord Alexander Kennedy is one of the tunes I've really wanted to tackle. And when Seamus Coyne got his band together,
Yeah.
I remember I almost jumped on board with that, but he sent me the music and LAK was in there, and I thought, all right, cool, this is my chance to get this one down. John Morrison of Ashen House, of course, was in there. That was another, reel plagued me my early years. I just could not get that reel down, and it wasn't until I finally joined Wasatch where I finally was able to nail it. But I probably can't nail it now. Right? So probably something I need to brush back up on. But and then Cameronian Rant, for some reason, I don't know why, but
No, yeah, I played that one in high school. That's a great tune. Yeah,
it's a great tune. But I think it's a good tune. I like the more minor sound it has to it.
Yeah, totally.
But I think it's a great memorization tune. Because if you can memorize that body of work, then you could pretty much memorize anything. So that's another one. At some point, I'm going to tackle when I have a free moment or moments. Yeah.
No, that's a great list right there.
Yeah.
Well,
but
Scott, I don't want to put you under any kind of pressure.
Okay.
But I usually kind of fade these episodes out with the guests saying something. Right. So the audience is all pipers and drummers. What might you say to bring us to a graceful close? Whether it's heavy and serious or just reciting a ridiculous limerick that you picked up somewhere along the way.
Heavy and serious. I guess I'll go on my being in a pipe band, being a piper in a pipe band.
Yeah.
Spiel. This would be more of a serious thing. A lot of people would say that piping is piping, right? Doesn't matter. You're a soloist, you be a band piper. Piping is piping. Well, I would say that running is running, right? But there's not. There's people who run marathons. There's people who run sprints, right? There's people who run on the treadmill a couple days a week to try to get back in shape. So running is not just running. A person who's training for a marathon is going to train differently than a person who sprints, right? So band piping and solo piping, completely different things. Yeah, they're related. Yeah, okay, they involve a bagpipe and you're playing music. But the soloist gets to do whatever they want. A soloist can pick out their own music, for the most part, until you get to the higher grades. That changes, of course. But as a soloist, you can pick your own music. You can play whatever chanter reed you want. On the day of a contest, you can either play up-tempo, or you're dragging some ass, maybe you can play down-tempo. You want to set yourself up a little higher, a little flatter, doesn't matter. As a soloist, you're free to do whatever you want. As a bandpiper, you don't have those options. You follow me?
Totally.
As a bandpiper, you're going to play tunes that you don't want to play. You're going to play tunes at tempos that you're not comfortable with. You're going to have to play tunes and express and phrase them in ways that are kind of counterintuitive to the way you want to do it. You're going to have to play chanters of reeds you might not like. You're going to have to play at a pitch that you don't like. None of that matters. If you're going to be a bandpiper, you got to show up. You got to have that music memorized. You got to play it the way everyone else is playing it. You got to show up and give it your 100% effort every time. That's the only way you're ever going to know if a tune is working for a band. This is something I've also tried to, when I counsel bands, I try to help out. If you just show up and go through the motions and you're just going to play the tune however you want, you're not going to maintain good tone, you're never going to know how good that could have been. And you've got to put the things that you don't like aside if you're going to be a bandpiper. And that's why I think being a bandpiper is infinitely more harder than being a soloist, because you're going to do things that you don't like. And the only way that your band's going to succeed or work is if you can put those things out of your head, do what everybody else is doing, get on the same page and give it your very best effort. It doesn't matter if it's at a rehearsal, if it's at a performance, and definitely if it's at a contest. You've got to give it 100% every time. And the things you don't like, you've got to put those outside of your head, And people find that hard to swallow. They're like, well, if I don't like it, why am I here? Why do I do this? And I would say, well, again, exactly. If you really don't like the music, if you really don't like the direction the band's going, then why are you here? But as a band, you got to come together. As a band player, you got to put things aside, and you got to do what you're supposed to do. You got to do what everybody else is doing. You got to sound like everybody else. Yeah. Right.
You cease to be an individual. You become a part of a bigger thing.
Right. And I've had people fight me on that. It's like, why do I have to get a new bag? I like this bag. Well, that's not the bag everybody else is playing. When temperature changes happen on the field, and they happen, that happens in the afternoons. Rain clouds roll in, temperature goes down. Yeah, you're the odd man out with you're playing a different bag. Same thing with drone reeds, strength of chanter reeds. Even I tell people, you're going to play in a band, you might have to play a reed that you're not comfortable with. It might be a little too hard. You all have to play the same strength of reed, because when those temperature changes happen, your easier reeds will change faster than your harder reeds.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to get cut out of the contest, like I said, you've got to sound like everybody else. And if your tone falls off 2 minutes before you're supposed to go on, that's it. You're done. You're getting sat out. Doesn't matter how much effort and practice time you put into it and how much money you pay for the hotel to stay for the night. That's it. If you're not doing what everybody else is doing, then you don't get to play. And that's what it comes down to. That's why I say being a bandpiper is not easy. People think being a bandpiper makes you lazy.
Like it's easier than soloing.
Right. No. If that's your mentality, or if that's your takeaway from it, something's going wrong.
Then you're probably not a very good bandpiper.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Like I said, working on a team in any capacity, even in the workforce.
Yeah.
You're going to work with people you don't like. You're going to do work you don't want to do. It doesn't matter. You got to show up and you got to give it your best effort. That's the only way you know it's going to work. That's the only way you're going to be successful.